Hello and welcome to another episode of Market Watch. In our last episode, we brought you the overall implication to Sri Lanka's economy as a result of the breaking GSP Plus news. Today, we'd like to look into a little more insightful industry-wise what implications GSP Plus has for Sri Lanka's apparel sector. And to give us this insight, we have with us Mr. Hasitha Premaratna, Brandix Lanka Limited's Chief Financial Officer, who is a prominent individual in the industry, here to share with us his thoughts on GSP Plus as it applies to the apparel sector. Thank you, Hasitha, for taking time to be with us. To start off proceedings, Hasitha, how do you see GSP Plus implications to the industry as a whole when we take the apparel sector, Hasitha?
Yeah, I think apparel will be one of the key beneficiaries of GSP Plus if you look at the overall scheme of things, because when GSP Plus first came into the country in 2005 and it lasted till 2010-11, and during that period the apparel industry did a lot of work in terms of attracting new customers from the European region and also looking at different solutions to the European market and grab a sizable portion of business from Europe. If you remember, I think from 2005 to 2010-11, we saw the apparel exports to EU increasing from about 1.1 billion to about almost 2.2 billion US dollar levels. So this growth, almost 80-90% increase within that period of time, was the sharpest increase that you saw when it comes to the value growth to the European exports, and it did give fundamental backing because we brought in new customers to the industry. And not only that, we also created the supply chain in Sri Lanka, because one of the prerequisites was that, if you talk about apparel exports, it has to be that not only the sewing should happen in Sri Lanka, but also the value addition should include the fabric to be made out of either Sri Lanka or the region, which is region, I say the region, it will be India, Pakistan or Bangladesh. So covering from that region, we can bring the fabric to the country and then we can make the product here and do the export. Of course, if you bring fabric from China and do the sewing here and send to Europe, we won't get the GSP Plus because the fabric did not come from the region. So what happened was, in the last round of GSP Plus, fabric, not only we attracted new customers, but also we had grown the fabric capacity to sizable extent in Sri Lanka, which had a lot of potential now, because obviously we are ready now to take a quantum leap from where it stopped some time back. So that is why we feel that our industry is one industry that is ready to take it up very quickly and take most of the advantages without waiting and deviating things for too long. But having said that, obviously I think there are some limitations in terms of the capacity, etc., that we need to think about, especially the availability of the capacity as well as the availability of labor for the industry to grow as a whole. So what it transpires is that obviously we would not see a major a sign of the orders that were lost in 2010 coming back to Sri Lanka. It will be a different set of orders that will come to Sri Lanka. Ideally, it should be a more value-added, higher-end products that should come to Sri Lanka from places like China or maybe Turkey or maybe Eastern Europe manufacturing, so that we can pull those orders which are going at higher prices and creating better value. So if that happens, it will be a true benefit for the industry, because the GSP Plus can be used not only just to be competitive in the overall scheme of things, but also to be using as a tool to pull value-added manufacturing and value-added apparel solutions to the country.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, attracting the clients is going to be a key factor across. And as you mentioned, in the previous cycle, we did see the 1.1 to 2 billion plus increase in terms of GSP plus. Taking into consideration the new customers, the labor factors and the capacity constraints, what sort of growth can we kind of expect for the industry itself as a result of this turnaround in GSP?
Yeah, so I think there are two factors there. Of course, on one side, if you look at the type of capacity we have in Sri Lanka, there will be some level of restriction that will that'll come in because we don't have unlimited capacity. We have limited number of people, in this country, obviously with the 20-25 million population, and the working population in the apparel industry not significantly expanding, mainly because the construction, tourism, and other industries growing in the country and the economy at large, diversifying. So naturally there will be capacity constraints in my view, which will hold us, not really demand constraints, because if you have the capacity at the right cost, there will be plenty of orders that will be available from the European region with the GSP plus. But unfortunately, we won't be able to grab everything that is around, because we have to be selective. We have to find our niche in the space, and we have to focus and ensure that we do get the best value for the country from what to match the resources that we have. So I think when you look at it in that context, I think easily about a $500 million improvement in the exports to Europe can be expected in the short to medium term. Of course, we are in the middle of a calendar year, so it will be difficult to assess what would be the amount for this year, because it will be taking a little bit of time, but not a lot of time. And hopefully in the next 12 to 18 months, we should see that surge coming in at least. So if that comes in, I would expect in the following 2 to 3 years, similar or a little bit of a higher expansion to come, because then you will see capacity additions also happening in the country, and mainly newer type of production capabilities also to be attracted into the country.
Yeah, on the production capabilities, as you put it, Asita, how would you say our readiness in the apparel sector is with regard to capturing maybe this significant increase in demand?
Yeah, the key would be, I think, the supply chain and the fabric availability also, because now if you look at the cotton knit production in Sri Lanka, on the cotton knit side, we have a strong play. Particularly when you look at the lingerie market, whether it's bras or panties or whether similar products that we are talking about on the lingerie side, as well as the t-shirts and some of the other innerwear products that come in. So innerwear side, I think we have a strong presence, we have a good platform, and there is better value creation that is possible on the cotton side. But having said that, the world trend is moving towards also the synthetic side, which is more connected with the athleisure type of products, the more sportswear type of products, which we do in the country a reasonable amount, but definitely a lot more can be done. I think when you look at the overall picture, the supply chain is not ready, which means the fabric is not ready at the moment on the synthetic side to grab the GSP plus, not only in Sri Lanka but also in the region. We don't see any major synthetic players in India or in Pakistan, which will definitely be one of the constraining factors for us to take it to the next level. But having said that, what you would see is that the current players in the country, as well as maybe some of the newer investments, will come to Sri Lanka, because obviously the synthetic supply chain, synthetic fabric will be a big play in the growth of the country's next wave of exports from apparel framework. And obviously with GSP plus coming in, it will be giving even more good reasons for fabric manufacturers to set up in Sri Lanka or expand the existing capacities in Sri Lanka to support GSP plus based requirements.
Right. On the competitiveness sphere, Hasida, I mean, looking at the regional individuals as well as looking at the global players, how would you position Sri Lanka GSP plus and on a generic basis as well?
Yeah, so if you look at the other countries that are duty free to Europe, Cambodia, Vietnam, which they have FTA, and then Pakistan, and of course Bangladesh. These are the regional ones. Then we have various countries from Africa. Most African countries are duty free to Europe. So if we look at Bangladesh over the years, especially during the time that we lost GSP plus, they have capitalized and they've taken significant portion of European business. In fact, more than half of their 28 billion exports go to Europe, right? So that's quite big and sizable, and they're making use of the duty-free benefits to make sure it works. But Bangladesh runs a different base. It's a low product value and also very much mass market, large scale manufacturing, made predominantly woven products that are being currently made in Bangladesh, because they've kind of established as the pants capital of the country, of the world. So in that backdrop, I think it's important for us to understand that every country has a niche to play. while Bangladesh play in that, we cannot play in that. Bangladesh has 156 million people, we have 21 million people. So naturally we don't have the type of labor, the population to support that kind of significant growth and scale. But if we look at Sri Lanka, I think Sri Lanka should look at places like Turkey, places like Italy, places like even China, where the labor costs are now hovering around $600 to $1,000. You know, and when we look at our labor costs, we are at about 200 to 30 levels, which makes a apparel industry worker kind of, you know, relatively cheaper. So if we look at what these countries do, what these countries produce, and target those products to be brought to Sri Lanka, that means we have still a lot of room to play in a value-added segment. So I think what is important from a competitive landscape is not to look at what's happening in each country and try to chase, but instead to look at what's happening in each country and see how do we find our niche and try to focus on getting there in a more competitive nature. Maybe not necessarily looking at the countries that have GSP plus, but looking at the whole map and see how to work on. Now Vietnam naturally will be a competitor because they will be duty free and they have the scale and their costs are not too far away from Sri Lanka. Plus also their investments and their capacity has been significantly expanded, especially due to the migration of Chinese manufacturers in the last 2 to 3 years in the backdrop of the TPP conversation, which of course never happened. So I think from a competition point of view to Sri Lanka, I think Vietnam will definitely be a big player. Bangladesh, well, I won't see it as a direct competitor, but definitely it will compete in certain segments of the products. But I think we should still look at countries like China, countries like Turkey, countries like Italy as our competitors, and even Egypt, Jordan, where a lot of manufacturing still happens and get exported to European region. We should try to grab business from there because that business that they do are a little complicated, right? Complicated products and sophisticated manufacturing technology involvements are there. But certainly we should look at bringing that business rather than trying to grab from Africa or Cambodia or Bangladesh, right? Because that business in those countries are much lower value based products.
Right. Also, I mean, GSP plus, the competitiveness factors, etc., it does put Sri Lanka on the map, but how do we look at the demand conditions coming in from the consumers or the customer side as well? Because it can be cyclical in the event there is an economic downturn which might affect the industries, and subsequently the demand conditions, GSP plus won't put you much in favor at that particular point. What sort of situation are we looking at in terms of that?
Yeah, so if you look at Europe, I think two things are there. One is European market is not doing too well, as we all know, right? So naturally there are a lot of price pressure. The second thing is post-Brexit last year, almost a year ago, there was a significant re-rating of the euro and the sterling against the US dollar. So obviously when you look at the currency depreciation in those, or currency movement in those regions, European region, we are looking at, or we are seeing price pressure coming in because we invoice in US dollars. Most of us in Sri Lanka invoice in US dollars, and then the value of the euro has come down at a retail point. So obviously the retailers are under price pressure and they would want to pass and cover something out of that from the supply chain, which is where the apparel, the textiles and rest of the supply chain will have to have some price pressure. Now one thing you can say that when those two things happen, that makes the buyers to take drastic decisions. Something that they make in China today, they will want to move to a different destination. Normally, the human nature is that when things are smooth, you don't want to take radical change decisions or difficult decisions. But things are not going too well, that's when they will make those decisions. So I think with the Brexit related consequences on the exchange rate, plus also when you look at the overall conditions in the European market, that will force some of the retailers in the European region to focus more on cost side. So if we look at, the current Chinese and Turkish and some of those manufacturing, which those guys are paying higher price, obviously, I think we can give a lower price to them compared to those prices that they currently pay to Chinese and higher end. I'm talking about Chinese as well as to Turkish manufacturing, which should help us to grab some more business at that level. So if that happens, I think the market conditions in Europe as well as the dynamics there can be seen as an opportunity for us to win business, right? But having said that, general perception that is that, okay, things are bad there, so we are also getting impacted or hurt. But I would look at it a little bit differently. I think we should make their challenge our opportunity and try to upscale our business. But the key is how ready are we to, as a country, as an industry, to grab those business, because those businesses are not easy business. They are complicated products, short runs, short lead times, right? So naturally, we have to change our models, and we have to also look at how, as an industry, support that. And some of the bigger players in the industry, like Brandix, like MAs, like Hydromanis, are already doing it, right? So the smaller businesses will struggle a bit, but I think it's important to see how they consolidate themselves rather than running maybe 100 machine factory. If 5, 10, 20 people get together, then you might have 1,000 machine capacity to work with. Then you may have a bigger negotiation capability to work on, which will help to grab, and maybe even you'll have better money to invest into the business as well.
Right. How can you introduce the product types, mixes, which GSP Plus is being beneficial across? Anything specific in that department?
Not really. I mean, the product wise, there isn't too much variation when it comes to the GSP Plus and the duty to Europe, unlike US. US, of course, synthetics have 32% duty, cottons have anything between 10 to 16% duty.
Right.
So so naturally to US, if it's duty free, synthetics will be attractive to do. But here there is no major variation between the duties to really talk about. So as a result, I think there are no specific product to look at, but the key determination will come from the fabric in the region, because if fabric is not available in the region, you won't have GSP Plus benefits, simple as that. So that's where the initial phase, the cottons will continue to be the cotton based products. On the knit side, we have already enough reasonable capacity in Sri Lanka, in Sri Lankan mills, as well as in the South Asian subcontinent, where India, Pakistan have reasonable capacity. Even in the woven side, we have woven fabric mills in India and Pakistan which can supply to Sri Lanka, and the fabric which in turn can take the exports. But synthetic, we definitely have a bottleneck, and hopefully there will be more synthetic capacity created in the country and in the region for us to grow in apparel.
From your listed entities perspective, this TJ Lanka, how do you see these benefits in terms of the capacity, the technology readiness, being able to capture new clientele, etc.? How do you see these benefits flowing through?
Yeah, so I think in the last year or so, we have been slowly reacting to these GSP Plus words, and we have consciously expanded the capacity both in India as well as in Sri Lanka. In TJ India, we are doubling the capacity, and in the meantime, of course, in Sri Lanka, we are bringing in the synthetic capability and doing smaller expansions as well to support through productivity improvements. So naturally, what we want to do is to looking at the upmarket, better value creation to be brought in with more technology based, R&D based, innovation based product creation, so that our capacity that is available can be used and optimized to improve margins and profitability. But having said that, I think what is also important is to secure the base and ensure that existing customers are looked after, and they're not being suddenly dropped to accommodate any other European customers who may come new, because duty benefits come and go. But customers who stay for long are our lifeline, and they have looked after us right through, and we've worked in strategic partnerships for long. So I think it will be very useful to have that balance and make sure that the capacity is better utilized to support that requirement. But good news is that we are already expanding, doubling the capacity, so we have the capacity coming up for cotton side in a bigger way to cater to any new demand. And in the meantime, in Sri Lanka, the synthetic capacity, though it's small, hopefully can be also used to leverage better value creation.
Right. An interesting point you brought up was the tariffs do come and go, and which is the same thing which happened with GSP Plus the last time around, which Sri Lanka took a bit of a burn on as well. From a sustainability perspective, GSP or not, what would you feel that the sector has to do in order to maintain its growth levels and sustainability?
Yeah. So I think if you look at the industry in the last 6 years, in the absence of GSP Plus, we had to put more effort. We had to look at things differently, and we still at least didn't let things go down, right? Even the exports to Europe have not dropped; it has stayed. It has not grown, of course, but at least it had stayed in the last 5-6 years. That is that is because obviously the industry took a quantum leap and invested into the next phase, like what I said, to look at what's happening in Turkey, what's happening in the higher end manufacturing of China, and how do we grab that business. So flowing of that business has already happened in the last so many years. And classic example is textured jersey. TJ we had orders coming in to Europe. In fact, actually the European business growing despite GSP Plus going out, because we had strategies put in place to go up in the value chain and grab business which were happening in different parts of the world where it was more expensive than Sri Lanka, so that we can actually get a better price, as well as the buyer can get a better price by moving to Sri Lanka as a supply chain. So similar models have to be created, because I think what the duties could do, what duty benefits could do, is that it could kind of, in a way, make people lazy. Right? If you don't have duties, you will have to work hard, you will have to make it happen for your survival. So what I think the approach would be is that we will not try to take the duty and say, hey, guess what, time has come for us to relax. Right? The race that we ran for the last 5, 6, 7 years without any GSP Plus benefit, we will run the same race, but this time we will have 12% of or 9.6% of added benefit to play with. So that benefit we should use during this time to grab better business, position the industry better, improve profitability, bring better cash flows, invest that money towards the sustainable expansions and sustainability of the industry, rather than trying to cream the money out and pay out dividends to the shareholders, everything. But we'll have to have certain portion of this added benefit to be reinvested back in order to have sustainability in the industry. So that's how we see the next few years of growth. Of course, we have to go up market, as I said. We have to improve on innovation and R&D side of things. We have to focus on technology, which is a big thing, because that's the next revolution of this industry. So technology is absolute must, whether you talk about product development or whether you talk about manufacturing, whether you talk about automation. Technology has to come into the picture. And also we have to look at the speed models to give logistics solutions as well to our customers, who will look at continuous changes, because one of the dynamics that's happening in the retail space is that a lot of shops to online manufacturing is a transformation. So a lot of online sales are happening, online retail is happening, and I think the online space with people like Amazon will grow rapidly compared to the normal store sales, traditional store-based sales. So when that happens, the Sri Lanka should be able to better take advantage out of that and better focus, because naturally when we have that kind of that kind of geographical presence with ports and accessibility to US and Europe better than some of the other competitors, we should be able to actually position ourselves and come out with different solutions. So I think technology as a key, research and development is a key, R&D side of things, and innovation is a key, and third thing is the logistics and the supply chain solutions will also be a key. So these three things we will have to do whether we have GSP Plus or not. And we have to keep benchmarking ourselves with people like Turkey, Italy, or China, not with Bangladesh or Cambodia. And we should try to push ourselves, the industry, to the next level during this period, and make use of these duty benefits to capitalize and have better margins and create profitability to reinvest back into the industry for its sustainability.
So there you have it, GSP Plus and its benefits to Sri Lanka's apparel sector. And even from a sustainability perspective, what Sri Lanka needs to be doing in order to milk this as much as possible and take the industry across into the next level. So thank you, Hasita, once again for joining us, and thank you viewers for joining us. We hope you've had an insightful discussion with us today, and have a good weekend, and we hope to see you next week.